Welcome back to Made for More. I am your host, Holly J. Moore. I am a divorce lawyer who is passionate about helping all of us to use the adversity to grow and show up as the best version of ourselves. Aaron, are you there?
I am here. I'm just Googling things.
Oh,
You have a question? I'm just going to Google it. Boom,
don't
boom,
do
boom.
it. Don't do it. Okay. So tell us about the guest today.
Well, Maggie Jackson is all about how technology has kind of gotten in the way of, I don't know, just thinking, wondering,
Yeah.
and it's fascinating. Like I've tried to be intentional lately with the kids when they ask me something that I don't know, or maybe something I do know. Instead of telling them right away or Googling it right away, I ask them, well, what do you think? What do you
Yeah.
think they do? What do you think this is? How far do you think it is, to the sun or something
Right.
like that?
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I mean, one of my sort of pet peeves is like people that just always have to Google something right away. Like, whatever happened to wondering about something or thinking about something? Like, I can't stand that we're in a society of like, just Google it, find out the answer right now. Don't you dare spend a minute thinking or wondering about it. Just Google it. We are joined today by Maggie Jackson, author of Uncertain, The Wisdom and Wonder of Being Unsure, as well as several other books. Maggie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. So start off by telling us about your work. Like, I know you have sort of a body of work. Tell us about it.
Sure. Well, I come from the background of being a journalist, national columnist for the Boston Globe, foreign correspondent around the world. But I've been writing about big picture, kind of messy social topics for a while. And actually, Uncertain is the end of a trilogy. The first book was about the nature of home in the digital age, where we can find refuge when home is permeable and portable. Second was called Distracted, that says it all. And then the third is about uncertain. So all of these are topics that are right under our noses that we live with every day, and yet we probably couldn't define. So I try to sort of take the lid off these really important aspects of humanity, drawing on the new science that shows exactly why these are important topics in our life.
And what made you so interested in these particular topics?
Well, I think that they, again, are under the radar in a way, that I was a work-life balance columnist for a while, and I wondered why work was always first in that phrase and in our lives. And a book about the nature of home is very rare and unusual even today. And that was a while ago that I wrote that book. Distracted, I was seeking to understand technology's impact on our lives. And I literally was in the library doing this deep historic research on the rise of the telegraph and the train, et cetera, and realized, boom, actually the issue is attention. Attention, the human faculty that we don't teach our children, that we need to use skillfully, and yet it's being besieged and fragmented every day. And that book left me wondering, Distracted left me wondering, well, attention is a vehicle for a better life, a bridge to a better life. What do we want to do when we have a moment's focus? Well, we want to think well. So what does it mean to think well in the digital age? And long story short, I was writing this massive book about thinking, but the first chapter was about uncertainty, and I realized I had hit pay dirt because there was so much new scientific discoveries about our brain on uncertainty and how we use it skillfully. It's not something that, I mean, we like to talk about being comfortable with uncertainty, but actually my book is about being productively unsure. And through being skillfully unsure, we gain curiosity, resilience, mental well-being, adaptability, which are precisely the skills we need today in this world of flux and change, etc.
A prenuptial agreement, or sometimes called a premarital agreement, is an agreement that two parties enter into before they get married that basically chooses to deviate from state law. It assigns rights and responsibilities regarding assets and debts that are acquired during the marriage. Some common misconceptions about prenups are, one, that they basically doom the marriage to failure, or that it's really planning to divorce, and neither of those things are true. But the real value of a prenup is talking about and creating rules around how the things that you acquire during the marriage are going to be characterized. A prenup can protect things like art collections, real estate portfolios, businesses, all those types of assets. The ideal timeline to get a prenup is not 2 weeks before the wedding. The final version of a prenup has to be presented to the parties 7 days before they actually sign it. So there's like a 7-day waiting period. As soon as you get engaged, you should seek a lawyer's advice and counsel on a prenup and start the process then, because the closer the prenup is signed to the wedding, the more likely that the court is going to think there was some sort of duress involved in that person signing it, and they have to prove that the prenup was signed voluntarily in order for them to be enforced. At Moore Family Law Group, we represent a lot of high-profile people, celebrities, professional athletes, business tycoons. If you already have a lot of assets, or you think you're going to be acquiring a lot of assets during your marriage, we are the best ones to protect that for you and help you make your marriage stronger. Call Moore Family Law Group today.
Before you popped on, before we started talking to you, I was talking to Aaron and I was telling him one of my pet peeves is how everybody just Googles something. If we don't know it, we just Google it. And I'm like, whatever happened to wondering about something? Whatever happened to like thinking about it and having to wonder about it? And it's kind of like my pet peeve. So, but I mean, I'm no expert in the field, and I've never, despite that being my pet peeve, I guess I've never really wondered deeply about wondering. So tell us, what is the benefit of wondering?
Yes, no, really. Well, uncertainty is, in a nutshell, opening up the space between the question and answer. So
Yes.
there are many times in life when snap judgment or the instant answer will suffice. But we have to remember that the first thought that comes to mind, almost invariably, your first thought is based on what you already know. It's based on honed habits. You see someone, you stereotype them, you base it on what you know in the past about people who are in your group or not, etc. Almost everything is this sort of daily stream of expectations and biases and assumptions. When we meet up with something new or unexpected or ambiguous, now it could be, I suddenly hit a traffic jam and I'm on my way to an important meeting and I don't know if the app is going to give me the best way and I don't know if I'm going to make that meeting, etc. That's uncertainty. It's literally reaching the limits of our knowledge. So it's not full-blown ignorance, but you're at the edge of what you know. Things are changing. And so that's really where the action begins. Because uncertainty is a mindset that we can utilize and wield when we're meeting with something new and unexpected and ambiguous. And so how do we do that? What's positive? Why did I mention resilience and well-being and all that? There is a lot to unpack. It's a big topic. But I think we can start by, I call it SOS. We can begin to be skillful in uncertainty by, first of all, having the right stance. It's just like the batter gets in the box and they need to have the right stance in order to, hit that ball.
Yeah.
Just pretend that traffic jam is that ball coming at you. How do you have the right stance? Well, the first thing is you might be really uneasy. Uncertainty makes us uneasy. We don't like it. We feel kind of, in between, icky. Your heart might race, etc. Point one is uncertainty is kind of related to a stress response. When you meet something new, you get uneasy because you're stressed. But the new science shows us that when you're unsure at that moment, your working memory goes up, your attention improves, your brain lights up and becomes more active in many, many ways and more receptive to new. So basically uncertainty is a signal. The stance is, it's good stress. It's a signal that it's the time to not, be on autopilot, but to meet that new occasion. And that's why it's actually really related to kind of revving up, being on all cylinders. So first point is, don't mistake the unease of uncertainty for something to retreat from or to dread or to fear. It's not. It's not. So that's really important.
Okay. Let me interject a question in that, because in my mind, if we take the example of like being in traffic, now, most of us have navigation and all these different apps that will tell us go this way and over the hill and through the woods, and that's how you avoid the traffic and all of that. In that particular scenario, wouldn't it be more beneficial to use the app, to use the resources at our disposal to guide us to our destination? Like, is there any benefit of uncertainty in that situation when we could very easily use a resource to make things uncertain? I mean, to make things certain.
Sure. Well, I mean, certainty, I'd say, in that situation, when you pull out the app or when you're Googling instead of wondering,
Yeah.
it's a kind of facade of certainty. As we all know, Waze doesn't. I just heard a story. I was at a conference and a man listened to Waze in the Colorado mountains. He almost died getting
Oh.
stuck in the snow because it sent him on the wrong direction.
Oh.
So, hey, that's rare, but you need to have your mental cylinders firing when something's new and unusual.
Yeah.
When you feel that little spark of uncertainty, that's a signal to not, perhaps you use the technology as a data point or as a tool, or you use the, signs on the highway or whatever,
Yeah.
the information around you. But you want to be thinking, and you want to be thinking well, and uncertainty is the bridge to be doing that. It puts you in that stance to deal with something really unusual. So it's not that I don't use GPS, but on the other hand, I'm not going to trust it all the time. I want to be aware of my surroundings. I want to kind of know where I'm going. I want to, use my human capabilities. And
Yeah.
all of what I was talking about, that working memory, that good attention, all of that is actually helps us be attuned to the environment, to be attuned to change and what's gone wrong and what decisions we need to make. So that's where uncertainty fits in. It's really, really important that we don't run, hide, dread, fear, or uncertainty, because it's actually an overlooked superpower for when times are changing. When it's routine, same old, we all kind of zone out on the commute, etc. You can do that. But when you walk into that Monday morning meeting and you think, oh man, nothing's going to change. Oh, it's all the same, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're actually tuning out on the chance to understand the nuances in the room, to pick up on what's really going on. If you're sure that you know what's going to happen in the routine Monday morning meeting, then you're going to lose out on the chance to get on your toes and pick up on something new. You'll be the best equipped person in the room to deal with change.
Got it. Okay. So this is interesting because a couple weeks ago I read an article and it was talking about how basically our brain, the theory of the author was like our brains are getting so much weaker because we no longer remember phone numbers. It's all the contacts in our phone. We no longer really have to figure out how to get somewhere. We use navigation. We know, I mean, I even saw an article not an article. I talked to somebody the other day who actually like is dating, and she puts all the conversations of her and her mates into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT analyzes them and tells her like exactly what the dynamics of the relationship are. So, which honestly, that's kind of brilliant. But the point is like, we're not using our brains for all these things anymore. We're going to these outside resources, and because of that, our brains are becoming much weaker. Would you agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's certainly evidence that that's the case in many scenarios. Actually, there are studies by the FAA that pilots have a great deal of trouble if the automation, the computers
Oh
in the
gosh.
plane don't work for some reason, they actually have forgotten how to fly a plane. That's true.
Wow.
And then
Oh my gosh.
yes, it is true that studies show that people who use GPS have very little memory or understanding of their city or their landscape, which
Yes.
again, it's not just that you need to know your neighborhood code and, you need to know every, intersection, etc. Yeah, there is, information that we can, sort of rely on the machine for, but studies also show that those same networks in the brain related to GPS, just for instance, are related to abstract thinking. So you're actually less able to reason more. You're less able to think about those hard problems when you even just depend on something like GPS. So there's a term that's been used since the 19th century called automation bias. You put the factory worker into the Henry Ford's car assembly line factory, eons ago, and they just deferred to the assembly line, basically. They stopped thinking. They stopped being independent thinkers, which I think means they're less human. Fast forward to today, automation bias is a really important risk for humans. So you put your nail, you hit the nail on the head by raising this issue. And what I'm trying to say in Uncertain, my new book, is that here is the exact skill set, uncertainty, modes of uncertainty in action, I call them, thinking strengthened by uncertainty. This is the exact cognitive skill set that you need in times of change.
Right.
So, why is it important now? Well, we are becoming more dependent on these phones, these AI, etc., which is a very narrow type of intelligence. It's quick, it's automatic, it depends, it relies on what's already known. This is not a great device for being creative, for coming up with the next great novel, for solving that really, really hard problem in your family, etc. So, and now we're also at a time in history when, we've been emphasizing efficiency at all costs. We emphasize speed at all costs. We're seeing the human costs of all this sort of narrow emphasis, and it leads to the kind of what scientists call certainty centricity. Basically, it's an allergy to uncertainty. So studies show that people are less tolerant. Basically, they are more fearful of uncertainty. This is one reason why young people are so kind of anxious, is because
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're at a point in history when, lots of change and yet lots of fear of uncertainty. That's not a recipe for being our best human selves and for solving these big problems like climate and divisions, etc. That's not a recipe for moving forward intelligently or creatively. So uncertainty is not the panacea. It's not the silver bullet. It's not the everything, but it's something that we have overlooked and feared when actually it's muscle power for your brain. But we need to know how to deal with this skillfully.
Right. So I'm so glad you brought up the younger generations, because that's the first thing that came to my mind when you said, like, we've basically created this intolerance to uncertainty. I have 3 kids of varying ages, and I think it's interesting because I think sort of the conception is like, oh my gosh, kids today, they know more than we knew, like it's more dangerous, it's like all these things. But I think if you actually have kids that are growing up in this day and age, what I have found in my experience, and we talk about it all the time amongst other parents, and I see all the memes on Instagram about it, is like, these kids are terrified to go out and be independent. Like, it's like I see all these funny things on Instagram where it's like, back in my day, we were like, Mom, I'm having a sleepover, and you drove to Mexico for the night. And it's like, you can't even get the kids to leave the house these days. And I think part of that is
like they're so rigid. They're terrified of anything uncertain. They've got to know the exact schedule. They have no flexibility. I mean, is this just is it just me, or is this like, is this society wide?
Well, I think it's global. First of all,
Yes.
you can find studies of Chinese young people who are really anxious. I was just in Beijing for the launch of my book in China, and many young people and young journalists were talking to me about their anxiety about the future. They're
Yes.
worried. They're very worried, and I think it does. They're at point blank. Anxiety does lead to, fear of independence, to rigid
Yes.
thinking. And one of the ways we can look at this, I talked about the stance. Uncertainty is good stress. It's actually helping you physically and cognitively to confront the new and the unexpected. The second part of this SOS of uncertainty is openness. Now, what do I mean by that? Everyone sits, just like you or I might be more or less shy or more or less conscientious, those personality traits. There's a personality trait that's getting a lot of attention now called tolerance of uncertainty. I mentioned it's dropping, or rather intolerance is rising. So people who are really tolerant of uncertainty see it as a challenge. Note, I didn't say picnic, but see it as a
Right.
challenge. And they're more flexible thinkers. They, try new things in a restaurant. They go to a country where they don't speak the language. They're interested in difficult books, and they have higher mental well-being. So during the pandemic, the people who are really tolerant of uncertainty accepted the realities of the situation.
Yeah.
Now, at the other end of the scale is where you find people with anxiety. They
Right.
are fearful. They see uncertainty as a threat. It's
Yeah.
going to be a disaster if I go on that blind date. I
Right.
can't I can't cope with going and making a choice about my career.
Yes.
Should I move in with my boyfriend? This is just something to fear rather than to consider with joy and curiosity.
Right.
That's where a lot of kids are winding up these days. And
Yes.
literally, psychologists are now successfully treating the worst kind of anxiety cases just by boosting people's tolerance of uncertainty.
Wow.
It's a really big thing now. They're trying to teach high schoolers in Ohio to be more resilient by being more tolerant of uncertainty. So how do we do it? It's really exciting and good news.
Oh, I
It's
can't
based
wait to hear it.
yeah, it's really exciting. Now, I
Yeah.
try to tell many young people find this book so helpful for this reason and many more. But anyhow, so what they're doing is 12 weeks of uncertainty tolerance therapy consists of it jumps off on exposure therapy. So if I'm afraid of a dog, I'll sit next to a stuffed dog and then a real dog and a puppy, and etc. I'm exposing myself to dogginess. If I'm intolerant of the unknown, see it as a threat. Basically, you just try simple little things every day, like try that new dish in a restaurant, or delegate more at work, or this is a good one, let your kid pack their suitcase for a trip. It's going to
Yeah.
be a little unsure. And with high schoolers, they're actually, one of the assignments for them, and it's working, is to answer their cell phone without caller ID, without
Oh.
screening.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And my
Unheard
daughter,
of.
I have two daughters who are young adults, and one of them said to me, Mom, from my generation, that would be terrifying.
Oh, terrifying. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So these are small steps we can all take. It's very exciting because it's really working. If you get 12 weeks of tolerance for uncertainty training, the people who with anxiety who had that therapy, their worry levels fell in just 12 weeks to levels about akin to the general population.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Very exciting. So
Yes.
anyhow, this is S is your stance. Good stress of uncertainty is what you want to lean into. O is your openness. Try to be more open to uncertainty in little ways. You don't have to jump off the deep end, but just try. And it's changed my life to hear about this. I'm much more likely to try little bits of the unknown. I mean, I've been around the world. I'm, kind of curious and adventuresome in many ways, but we
Yeah.
can always get better.
We can always
And
get better. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's really exciting. Very exciting.
Yes. Yes. Well, I already know my kids are going to hate me because first already I'm always like, so you guys, I did a podcast and this is what I learned. And they're like, Mom, please. So now I'm just like saying, I talked to a friend today, but I always tell them when they're so rigid. I have 2 teenagers and then one 11-year-old. And, the teenagers in particular, like they're just so rigid. And I'm like, this is just telling me you need more practice at being flexible. So we are going to be flexible. I'm not telling you the plan. And now I have I have expertise to back it up that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, uncertainty is exciting. Uncertain moments are uncomfortable. They are
Yes.
not a picnic, but uncertain moments, many scientists call uncertainty a space of possibility. That's where we can see these different options, and yes, it might involve a few minutes of thinking, or it might involve, well, one wonderful study showed that CEOs in the middle of a crisis who are ambivalent about what's going to happen are the ones that are really inclusive. They seek out multiple perspectives on what's happening, and they're more resourceful. Now, that's opposed to the CEOs in the middle of a crisis who say, well, I know just what to do and I'm in total control. Those CEOs who are pretty intolerant of uncertainty are more likely to do nothing at all in the crisis. They cling to the status quo. So being uncertainty, I kind of think of it, I live near the ocean most of the time and also in New York City, but I think of it as like surfability, the surfing of life's changes. And it really does a lot. And the other word that people tell me, roboticists, doctors, executives, all sorts of people who are picking up on this news about uncertainty, they tell me, use the same word, they say it's liberating. That's
Yeah.
really important today.
Yeah, well, because life is uncertain. I mean, even like it doesn't matter what you do, what you put into place. Like it is inevitable that uncertainty will invade your life because that's just the nature of life. So, I mean,
Exactly.
you
No,
either,
you put
yeah.
exactly. You have a good way to put it. It's as one big world expert on anxiety told me, if you have difficulty with uncertainty, you have difficulty with life.
Yes.
Just as
Oh,
you put it.
mic drop. Wow. Yes.
Yeah. So the third,
Yes.
just I wanted to just make sure that we finished the SOS.
Yes. The last S. Yes.
Uncertainty. If that's okay, your
Please.
stance is important, your openness is important,
Yes.
and the third aspect or kind of pillar of uncertainty's wisdom is skill. To understand that we can build skill, we can practice different strategies to get better at uncertainty. So I actually went to Canada and I embedded myself in the operating room. I was, observing surgeries in Toronto, Canada for multiple days with expert guides, experts on surgical judgment. And I was trying to understand, well, what is an expert today? The expert we always think of as the person who knows just what to do, like those CEOs, or the person who is quick and sure, the doctor immediately diagnoses and the CEO who immediately solves the problem. But that's actually turns out to be a kind of expertise called routine expertise, which is, as I mentioned, based on what we already know. So the routine expert, so the doctor hears the patient say, chest pains, I have chest pains, and the doctor thinks heart attack. That's because they've seen it before and they, develop these mental models and they, routinely just can apply the best solution. It's great, except it doesn't work in times when things are new and unusual. So
Yeah.
that's why years of experience are only weakly correlated with skill and accuracy in a lot of different professions. So, senior auditors actually are less good at finding embezzlement in the books than undergraduate accounting students. Anyhow, long story short, I discovered that there's this new kind of expertise that's just been recently researched called adaptive experts. Adaptive experts do three things in the middle of a crisis, like the surgeon in the operating room, and I witnessed more than one. It was pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah, that
They
would be really interesting.
It was amazing. There
I
was a near
bet.
miss. There was a
Wow.
near miss because the guy was treating it like it was all routine, and actually he almost killed the patient.
Oh my
But in any case,
gosh.
adaptive experts inhabit the question. They slow down and they spend a little time when something's new. Makes sense, but it's very hard to do that. People
Yeah.
just want to, do the snap judgment.
Right.
Two, they widen the frame of their understanding by looking at multiple options. What went wrong? What's going
Yeah.
on here? Again, 80% of strategic business decisions are based on examining one option and running with it. And third, they deepen their understanding by testing and evaluating. So this is where you can see where the skill comes in. This
Right.
is all can be occur in just a few minutes. You can do it as a lawyer. You can do it as a
Yeah.
surgeon, as an accountant. It's adaptive expertise is basically kind of not relying too heavily on your learned knowledge,
Right.
but being open to continual learning. And that's, of course, uncertainty in action.
Yes, you know what comes to my mind as I'm hearing you say this is, I am a lawyer, I own a law firm. We're always hiring, we're always looking for, good people, attorneys, and the way we hire is through a scorecard. So every attorney we ever interview has the same interview questions and they're scored and we can compare them. And one of the questions on the attorney scorecard is this question, not to get too deep into the legal weeds, but it's like, somebody presents you with a prenuptial agreement that's one sentence long and was executed in a foreign country. And what the answer that I'm looking for is for the lawyer, and I say, like, how do you approach it? The answer I'm looking for is for the attorney to say, I have no idea how that's going to turn out. So I would research the heck out of it. I would explain to the client the pros and the cons. I would turn over every rock and stone that I possibly could to find the answers. And then we would evaluate, do we take this to trial or do we not? And what I have found is, well, pretty much almost every attorney, because I feel like I can say this, I am one, we're all involved in our ego and we want to know everything and we want to have all the answers. So most of the time, the attorneys say, nope, it's never going to work. I would not take it to trial. I would tell the client to go, kick rocks, go away. This is a non-starter. Usually, though, the less experienced attorneys will say, well, I would have to research it. I would have to, look into it more. The more experienced attorneys, with the exception of one who we just hired because he had such a beautiful approach to this question, but the more experienced attorneys say, no, it's never going to happen. And the question is actually based on a real life case that I had where I turned over every rock and I got really curious and we litigated it for 3 weeks and we won. Like, the prenup was enforceable. But point being is, like, I can see this concept of the adaptive experts at play, where it's like these really experienced attorneys who are, high profile, like really good attorneys you would think would know, you would think you would want them to be curious. They're not. They think they already know the answer and it's the wrong answer. It's not the answer that I'm looking for. So this is really fascinating.
I hear that in so many different professions.
Yeah.
It's partly the culture. As I mentioned, we've set up a kind of culture where you have to know instantly, or you're not really an expert,
Right.
or you don't really, leaders should be the ones who come up with the answer quickly, and they're seen as weak if they're not. But the good news is we can be a leader, or as you're saying, the best kind of lawyer or professional by making room when something's new and unusual for skillful uncertainty. And I think that really opens up and helps us. In other words, in some ways, it sort of turns on its head a lot of what we've been thinking about. What is success? What is leadership?
Yeah.
How do you deal with crises? And we kind of know that in our world, look around us, a lot of our responses to, leadership and crisis and the problems of our day aren't working, and it's time to get creative and innovative and think well, and also to have faith in the human mind, because
Mm,
we need to have faith in the human mind.
I love
I think that
that.
humans can still be in the driver's seat. I've studied technology for decades and its impact on humans and AI recently, and I know that humans are, as intelligent, in more intelligent in certain ways, and those are just the ways that we need today. So it's really important to embrace these facets of strategic uncertainty.
I love that. I think that's a perfect place to leave off. I love what you say about faith in the human mind. That is beautiful. Maggie, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for all your expertise.
Thank you very much for having me. A great conversation.
I've got just a little bit more to say. In my conversation with Maggie, we talked about how the younger generations, they're experiencing a lot of anxiety due in part because of this intolerance for uncertainty. And I definitely find that to be true in my own experience. But I think we all sort of have this intolerance to uncertainty. And I love how she talks about the concept of thinking well. And part of thinking well is being able to tolerate some uncertainty and sort of having this curiosity. And this is something that we've talked about quite often on Made for More in terms of relationships and actually getting curious instead of judgmental. And I think this conversation is really just a further extension of that. It's part and parcel of, showing up as the best version of yourself is to just really be curious. You don't have to just Google everything right out of the gates, and we don't have to rely on all the technology available to us. We can wonder and we can practice thinking well. And my favorite thing that she said is we can have faith in the human mind. It still works. It's still good. It's still beautiful. And it's still really something to be valued. And don't ever forget, you were made for more.